I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. It started out as something venti, but also as an idea for an essay. Now, some YouTube videos later, my thought said, why not turn this into a video as well? And why not try animating it? Knowing full well I have no knowledge of animation whatsoever. So if you're watching this right now as a video in the future, Christ, I can't believe I did it. Side note, I have made a coming out video some time ago, but decided to delete it because it was bad and it looked so much like an apology video. But without further ado, let's go. Growing up in a conservative Filipino Catholic family, it was easy to forget that I grew up in a heteronormative environment. For those who don't know, heteronormative means what's for boys is for boys and what's for girls is for girls. Fortunately, my environment wasn't as toxic as most are in other places. No one ever forced me to only play with Barbie dolls, or to only wear girly things, or to only play with girlfriends, of which I had none. Seriously, my first best friend was literally the neighbor's son who also happened to be my classmate. And everyone at school seemed to be raised the same way, at least from what I remember. And please note, my memory isn't to be trusted. Because of my family situation, I was always moving, and I would always be switching elementary schools year after year. And that was okay. One time, though, I got to stay in one school for both 4th and 5th grade and made the most amazing friends, one of which became my all-time, title-bearing childhood best friend. But then, 6th grade came, and I had to move again. But it was okay. Funnily enough, 6th grade was when I heard my first LGBT-related word, excluding bakla, which is the exclusive Filipino term for homosexual male. It was just after classes. We were all playing in the courts because it was a public school. Nobody really cared for our safety at the time. I remember I was running from someone, probably playing tag, and I stopped to catch my breath. At the corner of my eye, I saw some of my classmates playing this game where they see who can jump the highest over a rope made of rubber bands. And boy, were they good. They had all these flips and tricks to get over that rubber band rope that went higher and higher in increments. So I thought, why not watch them for a bit? So I went over to the side, just far enough where I wouldn't be able to trouble them. And I watched in awe as this one girl jumped over the rope with grace and beauty and elegance, and then lock eyes with me to suddenly shout, "Ew! Lesbian!" And my mind sorta blanked. I could hear my playmate laughing at my side, seeming to be in on the joke. And because I had no idea what was happening, I laughed along and said, "Lesbian," because that was seriously what I heard. What the heck did lesbian mean, and why was it so funny? I had no clue what was going on. So I just went with it, hoping my cluelessness wasn't obvious. In summary, I was a pretty clueless kid my entire childhood, in more ways than one. But that's a story for another day. As a kid, the only things in my mind were kid things, and caring for my family. But looking back at it now, all that moving might have made me feel slightly isolated, because I recall more times being alone in my house than playing with friends. But again, that was okay. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. But as a teenager, that's when things started to change. No one in my close family ever forced me to find a relationship or a boyfriend. There was no pressure from them whatsoever. It was the other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., who did just that. And it was also confusing because some of them will be like, "Okay, so you're a teenager now? You shouldn't just go around hanging out with boys. It's not safe." And others will be like, "Oh my gosh, you're a woman now. Do you have a boyfriend yet?" And I'm like, hang on. All of you are grown-ups, right? You should know that what you just said is extremely contradictory and hypocritical and illogical, and that's not what I actually said. I was a pretty stupid kid, so all I could think of was saying, "Okay, I won't hang out with boys too much," and "No, I don't have a boyfriend," which of course would be met by skepticism and disappointment. Up until that moment, all my cluelessness had gathered and caught up with me overnight. Being in high school meant puberty, then of course relationships, and I knew that I didn't want a relationship at all. There were some parental actions in my life that became big parental mistakes in my eyes, which I vowed to never repeat. But we don't have time to unpack all of that. Basically, even at a young age, I knew I didn't want to be in a relationship with a boy. But did it mean I wanted to be in a relationship with a girl? At the time, I didn't even think about it. It was just no boys, and that was it. High school started off as how you would expect. Kids with new hormone levels and forming new friendships. And me? I don't remember. But what I do remember was finding out that the same childhood best friend I made in 4th and 5th grade coincidentally was in the same school as I was. And that made things so much easier. Eventually, I managed to make my own friends as well, and when she and I were placed in the same section during some years, it was probably the best years of my high school life. Again, I say probably because I don't remember much of it, but what I do remember was that expectation of me to be in a relationship. Most of the time, it was indirect. It died down over time, but it didn't stop the nagging feeling I would get always being watched. Wherever I went, with every single one of my actions, inside and outside school, just waiting to be gossiped by in the family tree. So, I hung out with boys within the classroom because I was always a bit of a tomboy. Filipinos, get it right. Tomboys and lesbians are not the same, but always made sure to hang out with my old group that was purely girls. I followed curfew at all times, always let my parents know where I was at all times, and that seemed to stop them. But that didn't stop me from seeing my classmates being in their hookups or in their courting stages or in their relationships. It didn't stop me from questioning my own beliefs and thinking maybe my aunts and uncles and cousins were all asking me to do these things because it's what's safe. It didn't stop me from thinking that what everyone else is feeling and doing was the norm, and that my not feeling anything was abnormal. So, I had my first boyfriend. Looking back at it now, I honestly can't remember how it happened. All I can recall is that he was this college kid that was from the same citywide cosplay group me and my friends were in, and I think he started courting me at some point, and for the most part, I thought he was a nice guy. He was an otaku, just as I was, which, to my stupid child mind, meant he was amazing. But other than that, I didn't know much about him. I started telling my friends, especially my childhood best friend, and some family members about him, because as this same clueless kid, I didn't know what to think, feel, and do. I didn't know what being in a relationship meant, and I didn't know what being in love meant. So asking them all was the only thing I could think of. And they all pretty much said the same thing. That we looked good together. Days passed, and whenever we hung out with that same cosplay group, he and I would hang out as well. And the people around us pretty much knew that we were apparently a thing. Whatever that thing was, I had no clue. So everyone would take the chance to woo us to being together. It happened again and again and again and again, which made me feel butterflies again and again and again and again. Until one day, as I stupidly did, I thought, oh, this must be love, which made no sense. I felt an attraction for him, sure. He was a nice guy. But I barely knew him. But what was I, a sweet summer child, to do but smile obliviously in bliss, as what I thought would finally be a new stage of being normal. So one day, he and I get together at Chowking with my mom and some other guy in a table somewhere else. I've completely forgotten why we were there. And he had been asking me if I could be his girlfriend for some time now. And on that day, inside that booth, with me, an oblivious, dim-witted child instinctively wanting some sense of normality, hiding my face on the table in embarrassment, I said yes. And looking back at it now, I feel sorry for how happy he looked, because I don't remember much of our relationship anymore. What I do remember is how sure I was of myself that I'm finally normal, that I had a boyfriend without having to go against my family's rules, and also having their approval for finally doing what they want. People were finally accepting me because I had a boyfriend. My family would always still go to the countryside because that's where me and my mother's side were born. But that didn't stop our relationship. We would still text and chat, and when we could hang out in the city, we would. One memory that sticks in my mind was one night, me, my sisters, my aunts, and my cousins were gushing about my boyfriend. They would egg me on and on about him, asking me questions about him, which I also don't remember. Then, out of nowhere, they pull up a phone and start recording me and asking, "So do you love him? We can send this to him. Tell him you love him." And again, for a split second, I blanked. Yes, I do love him. What was that? Say it louder. I love you. I remember flushing with embarrassment as they watched the video over and over again with glee. But it wasn't because I said those things and it was embarrassing for him. It was because I said those things and I knew it wasn't true. Because in the back of my mind, I still didn't know what love was. And yet, I said those things anyway. Why did I do that? That night, or maybe some other night, that nagging feeling kept building up because I remembered that having a boyfriend, having a relationship, meant love. Did I think he was nice? Yes. He wasn't a douchebag, so that was a plus. He was an otaku, a nerd, just like I was. He thought I was cute. I thought he was cute too. But that was it. I didn't know much about him, and he didn't know much about me. For some reason, even though I didn't know anything about relationships, I knew that mattered. Then it all started to sink in. That because I didn't know him, I didn't really connect with him. That because I didn't connect with him, I didn't really feel anything for him. That this relationship came to be purely out of peer pressure and my eagerness to feel some sense of normality. And that was cruel. So, after a year and a half, most of it being long distance either way, I decided to break up with him through text, which was a dick move. And while I've told myself and others dozens of times that the breakup felt mutual, I honestly, to this day, don't know if it was. I just knew that, in the end, it was wrong. Being in this relationship was wrong because I was naive and ignorant of what it actually meant. And I couldn't let this guy believe in something that wasn't there, or in something that I thought was there. I knew that it must have broken his heart, and that it made every single person who knew about our relationship fall back into the same disappointed, skeptic pattern I always knew about. And for a while, knowing that I did all this made me sick. But the knowledge that I stopped it because it was the right thing to do, that helped. And some friends who understood me still helped a lot too. So I was alone again. I wasn't lonely. The level of feeling alone that I felt before, during, and after my boyfriend were surprisingly all the same. Until the rise of role-playing came and I had my first MU. Or at least I think that's what it's supposed to be called. According to Urban Dictionary, MUs, or mutual understanding, is a term used mostly by Filipinos for two people who obviously like each other but have not yet committed to a relationship. So both parties are still free to go out on dates with other people. It's a vague area between being friends and boyfriend/girlfriend. She and I were part of the same cosplay group and the same classmate group, and we were really into role-playing. Anime characters, you pervert. Get your mind out of the gutter. We would both role-play as these two male characters who we both shipped with each other, and our role-playing got so intense until we reached a certain point, and out of nowhere, I realized I was sexually attracted to this person. Now, here's the confusing bit. After looking back at all of our shenanigans, I'm not sure if I was attracted to the character she was playing, or her specifically, or it was the character I was playing that was attracted to her character, or her specifically. It's all a confusing mess of identity mumbo-jumbo, But I didn't realize it until the very end. In the moment, all I knew was that I was sexually attracted to her slash him, and she slash he, I hope, felt the same way. And what was so surprising out of all of that was I never felt the same way with my boyfriend. Now, here's the question. Did this make me a lesbian? Because I sure didn't think about it at the time. During all of our fumbling, there were conflicting moments where I felt that I was my character, then I wasn't. And sometimes I would feel that she was the same way. But what really bothered me, after we had slowly stopped and then gone our separate ways, was that it was so easy to fall into the identity of the character I was playing and to feel attracted to her slash him. She would send butterflies up my tummy during our time role playing, sure. But was it because of her or because of the character? Did my familial upbringing have something to do with this? I felt sexual attraction to her, but we never went too far. Did I love her? No. No, I didn't. Because I still wasn't sure what love was. But romantic attraction aside, these questions were what helped me to realize that I was neither straight nor lesbian. Baby steps and all that. But I still didn't know what I was. I'm surprised I never considered bisexuality now that I think about it. I decided to do my LGBT plus research sometime after that, which I'm grateful I did because I learned that T stood for transgender slash transsexual and that the plus sign was actually for LGBTQIA. The Q was for queer, which was an umbrella term for anyone who isn't straight, much like gay is, or questioning. I was for intersex, and A was for asexual or asexual, I'm not sure. Asexual caught my eye because it simply meant having no sexual feelings or desires. And for a while, I felt that was me. I felt relief. But after casually mentioning it to some high school friends, hey guys, I think I might be asexual, only be met by laughter, I thought, well, back to the drawing board. Of course, I could see why they thought it was funny. They knew of me and my MU story. We were all in the same group after all. But it still didn't feel like it was enough. Luckily, even though I don't remember much of it again, my childhood best friend was supportive all the way. Past all the stupid things I've done since we were kids and teenagers, she still knew who I was, and I felt the same way for her. So, fast forward after high school and college and my first job, I realized that I was sexually and romantically attracted to my childhood best friend. I learned from my research that asexuality was a spectrum and was divided into a few groups: asexual, sexual, gray A, and demisexual. And demisexual meant a person who only experiences sexual attraction after an emotional bond has been formed. This bond does not have to be romantic in nature. But CJ, isn't that just having standards? No, it isn't. Let's make it simpler. Let's say your body or heart is a house, and your sexual or romantic attraction is the lights. Heterosexual or hetero-romantic people have their lights turned on only for the opposite sex. Homosexual or homoromantic people have it on only for the same sex. Bisexuals or biromantics are for both sexes. Pansexual or panromantics are on for all sexualities or romantics or genders. Asexuals, aromantics, and graces rarely have the lights on, but may sometimes light a candle or two for the right person. Demisexual or demiromantic people have their lights on for specific people that gradually grow over time. Like as acquaintances, the light starts off as a little candle. Then as friends, a nice oil lamp or flashlight, whatever. But as soon as that emotional bond forms over time, they are like the freaking sun. That, my friends, was how I found out I was both sexually and romantically attracted to my childhood best friend. In the middle of the night, living alone in an apartment in a different city I had to go to work to. It didn't come to me like a gasp moment as you would see in the movies. I remember that I was in the middle of falling asleep just after chatting with my best friend for her upcoming birthday, and it just clicked. This person was someone who I knew and who knew me back. Someone who, after all this time, had understood me as I've understood her. She had been there through thick and thin. She was someone I had unconditionally cared for all my life. And even now that I've pretty much forgotten about her, I still feel the same way. So, this is love. So this is love. Also, oh shit, she was hot. Did I tell her about it? Yes. And boy, I was nervous about it. And she was in a relationship with someone else at the time, even though I was playing it cool. And surprisingly, she was okay with it. And then she let me know her own sexuality. It took a huge weight off my chest, knowing that the one person I learned to love accepted me the way I was, with no harm done. I hope. Of course, we didn't get into a relationship because, above all else, our friendship was what still mattered to me. I wasn't going to pull another dick move and ask her to be mine. And besides, I didn't know what being mine even meant. All I knew was that I loved her and I didn't need anything from her in return. As long as she was happy, I was happy. I loved her and that was enough. Fast forward a few years to now, I am still very single and pleasantly so. The attraction I felt for my childhood best friend has pretty much dwindled down. I still don't feel the need to be in a relationship, sexual or romantic, even if the same aunts are still asking the same, "Do you have a boyfriend yet?" questions. To which I still answer, no, I don't need one. But also thinking, I'd rather have a wife, thank you. Sexual and romantic attraction are very hard things to figure out immediately if you know you're not straight. But don't let that stop you. It took me years to figure out what I was and to truly accept who I am. Even now, I'm still wondering if I'm homo or demi-romantic, but there isn't any rush. If you're in an unsafe environment to come out, that's okay too. You shouldn't be forced to come out. So take your time. But people also shouldn't force you to be something you're not. And if you don't feel like these labels define you or it's all so confusing, never fear, you can be queer. All I know is that I was fortunate to be in a close family that accepted me either way. When I came out to my mother, it wasn't like a singular moment, but rather a moment that was spread into little hints in conversations we had. So whenever someone here would ask me out, I'd say, "Sorry, but I like men or women, depending on who asks. It's not a big deal, mom." And a part of me already thinks she's known from the beginning, even though I'm not sure what she did know. I've made it abundantly clear I wasn't interested in anything sexual growing up, despite everyone forcing me to be. So, if she saw this as me being asexual and accepting it, then I think I overlooked that. Thanks, Mom. I remember the first time I told someone I was demisexual. It was to a complete stranger. Well, not really. We were both part of the same newspaper group, and he ended up becoming a good friend to this day. I'm not sure why I suddenly told him, or why him, of all people, because I barely knew him. But when I did, and he was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Was that another weight off my chest. I explained as best as I could, and he accepted me just like that. That made me happy. My sisters are probably aware of it. My old students were aware of it. Some old friends were aware of it. Explaining demisexuality to everyone became pretty exhausting at times. So what I tend to do is say, it's a little confusing, but basically, I'm gay, and that works. And I'm not sure if this is something that other demisexuals feel, but just as attraction can slowly build up over time, so would it slowly dissolve. Sometimes, when that first light comes, you have to struggle to find the light switch to turn it off because it's so blinding. But what happens with memory problems like mine, it dims and dims and dims until it's gone. But that's okay, since the moon is still there and our eyes naturally adjust to the dark.